And I think for that, I'm coming to that side of going, I'm working on some stuff now, but I don't want to say anything about it because I actually really want to finish it.
Well, for me, yeah, because if you do it, you gotta put yourself out there publicly. You
Yeah.
gotta actually get something done. For me, as I always like doing, I like teasing. So I'll tease a month or two ahead. I'm like, hey, I'm working. Man, I had 3 projects lined up, and I had the book, I had Indie Film Hustle TV, and then I had this contest that I co-did with Filmmaker, which is I was giving away $30,000 to filmmakers for a web series, and all those 3 were like in my back pocket, and I would just keep like, guys, I got 3 big announcements coming. 3 big announcements coming. All right, next week I'm going to do the first announcement, and then so I get hype about it, even just within my small community. Till finally I would just go, all right, boom, and with on Corner of Ego and Desire, I just dropped the trailer.
Yeah.
Like I literally 3 weeks after I shot the movie, the trailer was done, and all of a sudden people were like, did he just shoot a movie at Sunday? Like I still remember. I don't know if I told you I was doing it.
Yeah, well, you were in the podcast. That's the last time you were on the podcast. We talked about it.
Yeah. So a few of my friends knew about it, but I didn't really mention it.
Yeah.
And even when we were shooting, it was kind of like no one really knew what the heck was going on. I was just shooting stuff at Sundance, and not in the wildest dreams that anyone think, oh, Alex is shooting a feature film at Sundance. It's not something that's done or ever has been done. So I just kind of dropped it, and people were like, what? Like I got messages that day constant, like, did you just shoot a feature film? Like, when did you shoot this, last year? Like, no, this was done 3 weeks ago.
That's interesting for those listening. Like, they might go, well, I don't have a platform. I don't have a platform like Film Trooper or Indie Film Hustle, but I'm making a film. Do I drop it on to my, social network of people I know, or, what they do after they make the film, because normally we see with other filmmakers, it's like, we see them announcing like either it's a crowdfunding, like, hey, we're getting this part of so they're making a film.
There's multiple different, there's evolutions of the product and how you're going to. So there's the crowdfunding thing. There's the launch team thing. There is the gradual release of information about your project in your social media, in your whatever following you have to that following. So there's different strategies for all 3.
Yeah,
without question.
Either like a release of the trailer, then it's like we see like it's
behind the scenes,
or now it's in film festivals, so now we see the film festival run, and now it's available for worldwide or whatever it is, and it's like
right,
and then you might not hear from that filmmaker for a while, and they're coming back with another project. It's one of those things, and that might just be the life of a filmmaker that doesn't have a platform like that. They're just making films, and this is the trajectory that they're sharing with their followers or people, their friends, or their work. Mm-hmm. So I had to be remiss if I didn't ask this. Like, again, my book was self-published because I wanted to experience what that was like, and no publishers.
And you've done well, and from what I understand,
for what it is, for the self-published book over the course of whatever 3 years it's been out. It did way better than my film, which tells, that one of the things like, oh, interesting, it's a good thing. I
can make a book about making movies and make more money than the movies that I make.
It's just crazy.
I hope that's the case with Shooting for the Mob. I hope it dwarfs every film I've ever made. I really do. I pray that does. At the end of the day, man, it doesn't even matter what the medium is.
Yeah.
As long as it gets out, because you as the artist get stuff out.
Yeah, and it's helpful. So let me ask you, how did the arrangement work with the publisher as opposed to going self-publishing?
Well, I mean, my original idea was to self-publish this because I do have a platform, because I have an audience, that I was like, okay, I'll just self-publish this. Mm-hmm. And I go, Scott self-published. I'll call Scott up and ask him how he did it. And I was basically
RB called me about, he was going through his book.
Because I told him to call you.
Yeah. No, we were great. We were talking about RB Botto from Stage 32, and he was going through his publisher, and he was like, boy, the book just kicked his butt in terms of the amount of work, to get
it was massive. But then I talked to him one day and I go, RB, do you have the audiobook rights? He's like, no, I don't. He's like, is anyone doing anything with those audiobook rights? He's like, no. He's like, Well, why don't you call them up and tell them you want the audiobook rights and then do it yourself? Scott did it. This is how Scott do it. This is what I'm going to do when I do it because I have my own audiobook rights.
Yeah.
Because publishers still don't look at audiobooks as a thing.
Oh my gosh.
At this level.
Yeah.
And for people like you, me, and RB who have an online audience who's used to listening to us and our voices, why wouldn't you want audiobooks? Because that's the choice of a lot of our audience to consume our content is audio. So RB, I told him I called Scott up and he did, and he did his own. And then RB's got that beautiful velvety voice. I'm like, dude, you've got are you kidding me? Why wouldn't you do your own freaking audiobook? So that was it. Yeah.
Now, it's important to understand for the listeners on this podcast is that, if I had a prolific blog where people were reading my writing materials, and then I launched a book, paperback or Kindle or an ebook, there's a good chance that the sales of the written word might be more than the audiobook version. But because I have an audio platform, the podcast is an audio platform, majority of the sales of my book are from the audiobook. I do sell some paperbacks and some ebooks here and there, but nowhere near the amount of volume of sales I get from the audiobook. And that makes sense because whatever medium you're in and the audience that is built off that medium, they're most likely going to transcend in the same sphere. So definitely Indie Film Hustle, the podcast, makes sense that here's the audiobook of, Shooting for the Mob. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to have an episode that has a chapter or two for free.
Yeah.
And they could listen to a chapter or two of the book. So, and if you want the rest of it, go here. And of course, it just makes the most sense in the world. Why wouldn't you? Tim Ferriss does the same thing. He's with his massive audience, and so does Gary Vaynerchuk. All these guys, all those big guys. So we're just taking cues from the big boys.
Yeah, that's it. So how did the publisher come into play if you were going to self-publish?
So I was going to self-publish it, and all of a sudden I get an email from a publisher. It says, hey, we heard you on John Lee Dumas's Entrepreneur on Fire podcast 2 years ago.
Yeah.
That I did that. And he's like, we'd love to talk to you about maybe writing a book about entrepreneurship, from, how you built up Indie Film Hustle and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, okay, well, I don't have that book right now, but I'm in the middle of writing another book. Here's the pitch. And I pitched it to them, and they're like, oh, we want that book now. So I'm like, okay, let's talk. And we talked, and we made a deal that made sense for me and for them. And it's not your standard deal. It's not your standard book deal. It's a little bit different. So, I'm bringing an audience. I'm bringing all this stuff. And I carved out, the movie rights and any ancillary rights and stuff like that. But it made sense for us. And all of a sudden, I'm a published author.
There you go.
So all of a sudden, it's like, oh, great. This is awesome. I know a lot of people and listen to like, this son of a bitch. And I'm like, you know what? It's the way it is, man. When you go down a certain path and you start creating that energy, doors open, opportunities present themselves just purely for the fact that I started writing that book. Mm-hmm. The universe showed up and said, oh, well, he's serious. Let's give him a helping hand. Boom. It's just and we've all experienced that, like with movies and stuff like that, that we start making a movie and all of a sudden that prop that we wanted just magically shows up, or that actor that you really wanted shows up, or something along those lines. It's just the way the world works, the way the universe works.
Yeah. No, it's totally agreed. It's just giving energy to, to the universe, just making stuff. Just keep making stuff. You don't know where it goes, but, at least you're not just sitting idle. Now, I want to switch gears because now we got there's a bunch of little topics I would love to catch up with you. So I want to talk about we kind of hinted about the podcast world in relationships with iTunes. So
yes.
It was a couple months ago. I get this Facebook message.
It's Black Friday.
Yeah. Okay. So I get this message from Alex, from you, saying, "Dude, I think you just got booted off of iTunes." I'm like, "Oh, that's interesting." So sure enough, I was.
Only Scott would say, that's interesting.
Yeah, I didn't freak out. I was like, okay, so we'll check it out. And sure enough, that happened. I'm like, well, okay, so
not only you, the majority of film. I was the only one. I was one of the few left standing. And then I started getting emails from all of you guys going, Alex, what the hell happened? You're one of the few left up there. What's going on? I do this purging all the filmmaking podcasts.
So to let everybody know, there's actually an article that I remember I saved. It was, but it was across the board. It wasn't just filmmaking.
No, of course.
It was all of Apple's podcasts library. They changed the requirements or what they apparently later on, like they switched to an RSS feed version that was different, and then it just basically got rid of. They dumped all these different podcasts out there that might have been rated really well for one time. All of a sudden, were gone. Like they were just gone from the platform.
Oh yeah, with hundreds and thousands of reviews, and oh yeah.
So all the rating reviews are all gone. And the thing is, it's like it's not just it. Let me see if I can bring up the articles because I think I still saved it. I just wanted to. I think this isn't. The most important thing about all this stuff is that the idea is that you don't build on rented land.
Yeah, pretty much.
Because well,
I mean, right now in the podcast universe, iTunes is the thing. There are other platforms, and I'm on all the other platforms, but iTunes is the big boy. And if you're not on iTunes, it's very difficult because they own the technology, they own the distribution for it. So it's difficult for people to find you and things like that if you're not on iTunes. It's not everybody listens to me on iTunes, YouTube and Stitcher and
Google
the TuneIn
Play,
and Google Play and other places too. But iTunes is by far the 800-pound gorilla. I mean, they own 70-80% of that market share.
Oh, yeah. And
so if you're not on iTunes, you're really kind of not on.
So back in October 9th, 2018, the Business Insider had an article that said, it looks like Apple fixed the problem with manipulation on the top podcast charts. And basically it was just going through like there was something radically going on for about a 2-week span that just screwed everybody over, and they think they fixed the problem. So there's an article out there that I'll put in the show note links. But from then, so the thing about this is interesting because thank God I didn't build like an entire, like I was relying on the business and traffic just from iTunes alone. Like I had already migrated to other things, like the podcast was now a thing.
Stitchers, YouTube.
Yeah, it still existed, but I was doing it. It was in a limited form. I was only doing a few episodes here and there. So I hadn't, if it was in the middle of it a couple of years ago, I would have freaked out. Like, oh my gosh, I lost everything. I've been building all this stuff. So what we learned from that is like, thank goodness that still we house the original content. Then we could just resubmit it. But again, I lost all those ratings and reviews. I had about 100 or so, and I was like, "Wow, it's gone," because it's a whole new feed. And I changed podcast hosts. I think you're on which one are you?
I'm on Spreaker.
Yeah, so you used to be with Podbean, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I jumped onto Podbean. So I was like, screw it, let's get this up and running. So I just recently emailed Podbean because I was like, hey, I'm getting these emails from iTunes. And this is just the last 2 days. Now I'm getting iTunes, and let me try to read some of these. Not to read the whole emails, but it's funny that you said you contacted them about it. And I think
I replied right away. And then they sent out a mass email afterwards. I'm not sure. I'm assuming many people had the same thing that I said.
I think it was just you. I think you had that kind of power.
Yeah, that's exactly who I have. Yeah, exactly.
So essentially what iTunes was doing is, for those who care to know, is that it was important that they wanted to make sure that your metadata tags, the way that things were created in the back end, were done properly. Because in the past, which is I had apparently violated all these things in the metadata situation, or the way I created things, that got me booted off the first time. So I cleaned it up. Because I didn't have any information like this. I was going off what you told me, because you said, hey, there was an email that went out, or this is what they're telling me. So right. Off secondhand, I reached out to them, but nobody's, coming back to me. I'm going off what you said. So it wasn't until just recently, 2 days later, that I've gotten 3 emails from iTunes explaining, like, podcast creator, publisher, this is what we're looking at for metadata. So make sure everything's in order. And of course, you got back to them. One of the things they said is like, we won't accept episode numbers. Can you imagine? Like you're trying.
Insanity.
How do you like? I was.
How do you track it? How do you track it?
Yeah, like I can't tell you like. Well, that one episode I did with Alex. Well, which one? I don't know. I did like 5 of them. But what number? There is no number. I can't have a number because iTunes won't let me have a number.
Yeah. No, that changed. They did
change
that. But you just have to have the proper metadata, which I actually have to do the research on how to.
I did too. So I reached out to Podbean, and Podbean got back to me, and so I've got to because they have I had clarification. They said basically you will have to remove the episode number on your channel title. Please edit your episode and change your channel title. You can also tap the More button